Directors are often forced to cut scenes they love for one of many reasons, pacing or studio mandate being most common, but sometimes it works the other way too. Sometimes a filmmaker includes a scene in the final cut that sticks out like a sore thumb, leaving audiences to wonder why such a blatant misfire of a scene was included in the movie at all, which we're gonna get into now. I'm Ewan, you're watching Whatculture, and here are just a few movie scenes that should have been cut. First up, talk to the hand. Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. One of the biggest complaints about Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines is the overabundance of goofy comic relief. Never mind the fact that it's kind of redundant as a movie given how T2 Judgment Day wrapped things up, but the scene that has kind of become the flag bearer for its badness is the infamous "talk to the hand" bit. Also, yeah, this is another Arnie entry, which means I get to do the impression a bunch of times, which makes me happy, but probably also makes your ears wince in pain. I apologize. Now, early in the film, the new T-800, played of course by Arnold Schwarzenegger, acquires its clothes from a bar that's having a quote-unquote ladies' night strip show. The T-800 ends up getting its leather gear from a male stripper who initially rebuffs the T-800 by telling him to talk to the hand. We get a wince-inducing callback to this moment halfway through the film when the T-800 is on the road with John Connor and Kate Brewster, played by Nick Stahl and Claire Danes respectively, and they stop at a gas station for supplies. The T-800 attempts to leave the store without paying for the goods, and when challenged by the clerk running the store, he firmly throws up a hand and says, "Yep, you know it, talk to the hand." Get to do it again, that makes me really happy. The scene is accompanied by William Randolph III's Funky Man, which sounds like it belongs in a boner comedy and not a Terminator movie. Also, boner comedy, that's good. On the way, chipmunk talk. Carrie, 1976. Brian De Palma's Carrie is one of the most beloved horror movies of all time for damn good reason, which makes this random attempt at humor in the middle of the movie stick out all the more. A montage shows various students getting ready for prom night, and De Palma stops the movie dead for a full minute to focus on Carrie's date Tommy, played by William Catt, and his pals renting tuxedos. Their insane banter doesn't even rouse a faint smile, feeling like loose improv the actors came up with on the spot, and to make it worse, De Palma then decides to fast forward through some of the chit-chat, complete with a high-pitched chipmunk voice sound effect for a few seconds. It's really weird. Now obviously, humor in even the darkest of horror films can absolutely work, but in this case, it just feels tonally and stylistically at odds with everything we've seen in the movie, both before and after. In a goofy comedy, such a fourth wall breaking gag might pass the muster, but in a mostly serious horror film, it's a puzzling creative decision from a world-class director who otherwise, of course, knocked it out of the park. Next up, Briggs is Jim Phelps Jr. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Junior? That's it, I had to. In the penultimate Mission Impossible film, Dead Reckoning Part 1, we were introduced to Shea Wiggum's Jasper Briggs, a US intelligence agent tasked with hunting down Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt and his team. However, in the series' recent finale, The Final Reckoning, it was revealed that Briggs' name is an alias, and he's actually called Jim Phelps Jr. As in, he's the son of Jim Phelps, who was played by Jon Voight, the IMF leader from the original Mission Impossible, who was ultimately revealed to be a secret turncoat. Now, despite Shea Wiggum's solid as ever performance in the role, nothing about this revelation hits in any way whatsoever. It feels like nothing more than contrived, substance-devoid fan service in a film that's already bloated to the brim with excess of varying kinds. And yeah, it's an even weirder decision when you remember that Christopher McQuarrie called fan service poison during the film's press tour, despite the fact that this movie, you know, comes off very fan servicey in a lot of regards. Also, I can't help but think of Nick Lutzko's Nick Jr. song whenever I hear Jim Phelps Jr. If you know, you know, and I love you if you do. An action masterpiece with a contentious opening now, The Predator's Ship. Predator. Predator is one of the greatest action films of all time, enough that it's easy to forgive that John McTiernan kind of made a fumble in the film's very first scene. Rather than jump straight into introducing the audience to Arnold Schwarzenegger's Dutch and the late great Carl Weathers' Dylan, the film begins with a minute-long scene showing an alien spaceship deploying a shuttle to Earth. Considering that Predator refreshingly takes its time to reveal the true nature of the threat that Dutch and company are up against, it feels like a misstep to spoil that it's a technologically advanced alien from the very get-go. Like, you get rid of it, you get a much more intriguing and mysterious build-up to the ultimate reveal. This is absolutely something that feels like it was added at the behest of the studio, who maybe felt that general audiences needed an upfront tease of the danger to come, considering we barely get a good look at the creature in the first half of the movie. But at the same time, you could probably make the argument that being one step ahead of Dutch's crew is partially the point. That we know these guys are being misled and that there's ultimately nothing they can do to stop what's coming. I do think I would have preferred to not know, but hey, it's a masterpiece no matter which way you slice it, with one of the Predator's cool gauntlet-y things. Best action movie ever, IMO. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Next up, Uhura's fan dance. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier is easily the consensus worst Trek film, and buddy, it ain't even close. William Shatner's directorial debut is about as rough as his singing debut and is full of creative missteps. One of the more memorable of which is Uhura's infamous fan dance, where she's all nude and doing the dance. On the planet Nimbus 3, Nichelle Nichols' Uhura needs to distract a number of goons so they can be captured by the Enterprise's crew, and she ends up performing a nude dance, her modesty covered only by some strategically held fans like some kind of retro burlesque show, and not, you know, a movie released in 1989 and set hundreds of years in the future. Like, I think maybe we'd have pioneered some better distraction seduction techniques by then, but no, we're just bringing back the oldies. And then I think, like, in the movie, all the goons, like, their eyes go, "Awooga!" and then the tongue drops out like they're Tex Avery, and then, yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen Star Trek V, but I think that's how it goes down. My absolutely appalling riffs aside, this blatant fan service in the most literal sense feels incredibly out of place for Uhura as a character. Not to mention the ick factor of Shatner objectifying one of his co-stars like this. It's just not good. Now, in fairness, Nichols herself reportedly enjoyed filming the scene and had no issues doing it, but it feels off both in terms of the film's overall tone and how Uhura had been presented throughout Trek up to that point. Iconic horror movie slop now. Do your thing, cuz. Texas Chainsaw 3D. Oh yeah, now we're talking. Real sicko territory for everyone right now. Texas Chainsaw 3D is pretty lousy from top to bottom, but it would have been mildly improved by taking a chainsaw to this toe-curlingly cringe-worthy moment from the very end of the film. The sequel's mission statement was clearly to try and reinvent franchise icon Leatherface as a sort of anti-hero by having him team up with his cousin Heather, played by Alexandra Daddario, to slice up the town's corrupt cops going I really need to stop pitching my own Foley side project in these videos. It's not going well. It's not going well at all. But back to the list, it's not the worst idea in the world. Tobe Hooper knew this franchise had genre versatility when he made the amazing Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but as ever, it's all about the execution, and that's where things go horribly wrong. When Heather confronts the scheming mayor Bert Hartman, and what an amazing character name that is, she ultimately grabs Leatherface's trusty chainsaw and throws it to her cousin before telling him, "Do your thing, cuz." Now, like, this is a one-liner that's lived rent-free in my head for well over a decade now. The sort of misguided cornball nonsense that leaves you with secondhand embarrassment as you wonder how anyone shot, edited, and released the scene without ever going, "Did we go too far? Did we do that? Should we do that? I don't know if we should do that." Now, poor Alexandra Daddario tried to make it work, but there's probably not an actress on Earth who could have convincingly delivered this one-liner. It's just pure cringium. It's a new element on the periodic table. It exists, trust me. I just put it there. It's fine, don't check it out, it's all good. Next up, Folly a Coup, the Pigeon double take, Moonraker. Moonraker is about as unserious as James Bond movies get, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's such a thoroughly extra film in its bones, and at least wrings plenty of kooky fun out of its novel Bond in space premise. I can't say in space without thinking of that Tim Curry Command and Conquer bit. Such a great moment. I can't live up to it, but I had to give it my best shot. But despite Moonraker's overall fun vibes time, there is one moment that just goes too damn far, and that is, of course, the infamous Pigeon double take. During the outrageously daft sequence where Roger Moore's 007 drives a hovercraft gondola, or bondola, around Venice, director Louis Gilbert cuts to a clip of a pigeon watching the mayhem unfold. But not content to leave it there, Gilbert had his editor tinker with the clip, rewinding it and playing it back again to give the impression that the pigeon did a double take at Bond's speeding past. I love this. You cannot delete this. This is such brilliant Looney Tunes shenanigans that it goes from being bad to just being wonderful. Just like actual cinema, like, cool? Pigeons are great, man. We need more pigeons in Bond movies. That's my takeaway from this. Next up, the real Yuri. No Way Out. Roger Donaldson's 1987 espionage thriller No Way Out is, for approximately 100, I'm gonna say, of its 114-minute runtime, a total banger. The kind of suspenseful, sexy movie Hollywood simply does not cook up nearly enough anymore. It stars Kevin Costner in the lead as a model naval officer brought back to Washington, D.C. at the behest of an old college buddy, now working in the employ of the powerful Secretary of Defense, David Bryce, played by the late, great Gene Hackman. Costner's Tom Farrell is quickly caught up in a game of political maneuvers, where Bryce's secretary, the aforementioned old college bud, has him as a go-between between Bryce and the CIA, who were caught up in a battle of defense spending on the issue of a new nuclear submarine. During all of this, Farrell gets into a relationship with Sean Young's Susan Atwell, who, it also turns out, is Bryce's mistress and who Bryce eventually murders in a fit of jealousy. Now, rather than come clean about this, Bryce's secretary concocts an elaborate scheme whereby he cleans up the crime scene and pins the murder on Yuri, a long-rumored Soviet sleeper agent embedded in the upper echelons of power in Washington. Said secretary pins this Yuri figure unknowingly as Farrell, while also making Farrell the head of a covert investigation designed to catch the guy in question. So basically, you have this amazingly suspenseful setup whereby Tom is in charge of the investigation that's designed to set him up, which he has to delay, all while trying to expose Bryce as the real killer. You get this tasty commentary on Cold War paranoia, the military-industrial complex, and political self-preservation too. It's just a great time all around. Until we get to the ending, which reveals that Farrell is actually Yuri, and has been a Soviet sleeper agent the whole time. Oh yeah, this is just the worst kind of twist because it undermines and recontextualizes all the suspense, investment, and eventual release we'd seen beforehand, and overcomplicates an otherwise taut and clever thriller. Cut that twist, and No Way Out would probably be a Stonewall classic. As it stands though, it's a very, very enjoyable and well-made film that gets ruined by its final few scenes. Next up, Alan's Nightmare, Jurassic Park 3. No. I refuse to say this one should be cut. Like, can you imagine a world without Alan? No, neither can I. It's a world I don't want to live in, frankly. For those of you who are thinking that I'm having a mental breakdown right now, well, here is a quick recap on the scene. When Sam Neill's Alan Grant falls asleep during the flight to Isla Nublar, he has a nightmare that the plane has been abandoned mid-flight. Moreover, the only other remaining occupant on board is a velociraptor which promptly shouts, "Alan!" in a human voice. At this moment, Alan jolts awake and we see that the voice is from one of his fellow passengers on the real plane, which has neither been abandoned nor contains a dinosaur with tickets to a nice little summer getaway. Now, to be fair, this is just one of those deeply misguided moments that totally obliterates the established style and tone of the series. It's extremely silly and undermines any sense of danger or intrigue the film is trying to establish, but it's still fun. It's still a great time. And I will also say that Jurassic Park 3, best Jurassic Park sequel. Honestly, the Spinosaurus, I'm just here for the Spinosaurus. I love the Spinosaurus. Everything with the Spinosaurus and Jurassic Park 3 is peak. It's great. It's directed by Joe Johnston. It's a great movie. Oh, a good movie. A solid movie. Better than all the other Jurassic Park sequels, which is clearing a very, very low bar, but, you know, out of all of them, it's the only sequel that I would like to rewatch. So there we go. Let me know your ranking of the Jurassic Park franchise down in the comments below. Like, what are you putting below the original Jurassic Park? I'm genuinely curious. Next up, get away from her. Alien Romulus. While Alien Romulus was generally considered to be a solid return to form for the beloved sci-fi horror franchise, it was also rightfully criticized for leaning a little too hard on the series' legacy, with its overabundance of callbacks to the better earlier films in the series. Even if you could deal with the iffy inclusion of an Uncanny Valley CGI deepfake of Ian Holm as a Weyland-Yutani android, director Fede Alvarez well and truly crossed the line with that one-liner in the finale. When David Johnson's android Andy shows up to save his surrogate sister Rain, played by Kaylee Spaney, from the xenomorph, he shoots it before quipping, "Get away from her, you bitch." It's not that much of an inflection, but he's definitely questioning it. Like, is it okay for me to say this? Is it problematic of me to call the xenomorph a bitch? God, I hate this scene so much. This movie is so frustrating. Now again, to explain, any Alien fan will of course know that this is a nod to the very same line spoken by Sigourney Weaver's Ripley in the climax of the series' first sequel, Aliens, but its inclusion here feels nauseatingly forced and pandering, like something you'd see in a Star Wars movie, and not something trying to build on the legacies of Ridley Scott and James Cameron. They maybe could have gotten away with Andy just saying, "Get away from her," but add in, you know, the "you bitch" on the end basically just epitomizes everything that's wrong with modern franchise filmmaking. A refusal to take risks and a relenting desire to dine out on tired nostalgia. And that is why Prometheus and Alien Covenant will age better than Alien Romulus. You heard it from me. Prometheus good, Alien Covenant good. I'm gonna go down swinging defending those movies. Don't attack me though, because I'm feeble and can't really defend myself particularly well. Anyway, a left field pull for a Whatculture list, it's Cheer Up Charlie, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. There's no denying the brilliance of Gene Wilder's original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but there's also a near universal consensus on the classic movie's low point, and it's one song number in particular. Cheer Up Charlie, the overlong and melancholic musical number sung by Charlie Bucket's mother in an attempt to raise his spirits after he fails to get that elusive golden ticket. Now, there's no shade here against actress Diana Soul, whose solid vocal work delivers exactly what the assignment asked of her. It's just that this dreary lullaby is a slog that grinds the film to a dead halt. There's nothing catchy or memorable about it, it's just painfully low energy, and hammers home a point the audience already understands, that Charlie's feeling pretty bummed out about his look and his mum loves him. Okay, we get it. There are likely millions of viewers around the globe who reach the remote to skip past this scene, or just treat it as a natural intermission to go grab a snack or maybe, you know, go to the toilet, I don't know. What you do with this scene comes on is your business, it ain't any of my business. Just go and do your thing, come back and then soak up the Gene Wilder goodness afterwards. On the way, I Am Become Death, Oppenheimer. Now, I wasn't too partial towards Oppenheimer, but there's no denying that Christopher Nolan's Oscar-winning movie accomplished a great deal. And as is typical for Nolan, it also had a few unintentionally silly moments that didn't really quite work. In this case, Nolan gets the worst scene out of the way fairly early on with a clumsy invocation of J. Robert Oppenheimer's iconic quote, "I am become death, destroyer of worlds," itself lifted from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Though in public life, Oppenheimer famously spoke the phrase while reflecting on the Trinity test, Nolan decided to feature it in a wholly different and wildly unexpected context. Moments after old Oppie and Jean Tatlock, played by Florence Pugh, have finished their sweaty lovemaking, she picks up the Bhagavad Gita from his bookshelf and asks him to read from it, at which point he drops the quote. It's unintentionally comical to toss the quote into the film so randomly, and it almost felt as though Nolan felt that recreating Oppenheimer's famous interview would be too obvious, so instead he tried to just subvert expectations and do it in a really weird way. If this was the only place Nolan felt he could fit the quote in, then, maybe he shouldn't have bothered at all, because the whole part of, I am become death, he is become. It's a terrible pun. It's absolutely terrible. I will deal with myself. Don't you worry. Don't you deserve better than that. That is seriously lowbrow. Next up, the cat attack. Let the Right One In. Let the Right One In is one of the best horror movies of probably the last 2 decades, if not ever, but once again proving that no movie is really perfect, there's one scene which pulls a lot of viewers right out of its richly curated atmosphere. After Virginia is attacked by Eli, played by Ika Nord and Lena Leanderson respectively, and turned into a vampire, she visits a friend's apartment where she's suddenly attacked by her army of cats. Now, it would be disingenuous to suggest that the scene wasn't meant to be darkly and absurdly funny, but it unfortunately lurches into unintentional laughter due to the atrocious VFX work used to bring the felines to their rubbery, animated life. Even in the film's release year of 2008, this scene was widely singled out as its low point. A clear case of a filmmaker trying to execute a scene from the source material without really having the budgetary resources to do it justice. Considering that the scene isn't really necessary to further the overall story, it just should have been cut. There's just no point. There's no, although, it is kind of just objectively funny to look at, so in its own way, I'm glad they didn't cut it. Because it's fun. It's funny. Anyway, The Wolf's origin story, Bullet Train. Bullet Train is a not bad action thriller that's classically overstuffed, with many complaining that director David Leitch packed it to the gills with excessive, overdone flashbacks, explaining the origin stories of characters, both major and minor. Case in point, Leitch devotes an entire 3 minutes to a flashback montage detailing the life and times of an assassin known as the Wolf, played by Bad Bunny. Across almost 30 years, we see his tough childhood, his rise to the criminal ranks, and the murder of his wife at their wedding. The length of this montage certainly makes it seem like the Wolf is going to be a major fixture moving forward, but within 2 minutes of it ending, he's just killed during a fight with protagonist Ladybug, played of course by Brad Pitt. Building him up so much only to just get bodied in record time is surely the point, but considering how ludicrously generic the overbaked montage is, it just feels like a chore on a rewatch. It's just not fun. Plus, the film is already wildly overlong at 127 minutes, and little would have been lost by just cleaving this scene away, or at least shortening it considerably. Angel of the Morning. It Chapter 2. It Chapter 2 is a pretty typical example of an overconfident and over-egged sequel which got a little too high off its own supply after the positive response to the first film, which is still really, really good. We can do no wrong, director Andy Muschietti probably thought when he made the head-scratching decision to infuse a late film set piece with one of the most awkward and unexpected needle drops in movie history. When the leper attacks an adult Eddie, played by James Ranson, and vomits black liquid in his face, the chorus of Juice Newton's Angel of the Morning suddenly starts blaring out, before abruptly cutting off a few seconds later once Eddie has been doused in all the goopy nastiness. Sure, it's clearly meant to be absurd and WTF-inducing, but the editing is so clunky and it just feels at odds with the rest of the scene. It ends up feeling like the sort of naff amateur hour edit you'd expect from a teenage YouTuber, and not a mega-budget horror sequel produced by, industry professionals. Raptor, Gymnastics, The Lost World, Jurassic Park. Just when you thought it was safe to go back to the list, Jurassic Park strikes again, this time in the first sequel, The Lost World, which may well lay claim to featuring the single worst scene ever directed by the legendary Steven Spielberg. In the third act, when Dr. Ian Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum, is about to be pounced on by a velociraptor, his daughter Kelly, played by Vanessa Lee Chester, who is established to be a gymnast, makes the save by taking the dinosaur out with some slick gymnastics. Hell yeah. That is to say, we get a hilariously elaborate bar climbing sequence in which Kelly spins and twirls around, no matter her father's impending demise, before finally drop-kicking the raptor through a wall to its death. Though it's interesting in theory to see a human kill a dinosaur without any conventional weapons to speak of, nothing about the scene works, it's bad. The gym routine is overdone, and the raptor's expression as it turns to face Kelly when she shouts, "Hey you!" is diabolical. Next up, Chekhov's cat, Fallen. The criminally underrated Denzel Washington starring thriller Fallen climaxes with one hell of a cheeky plot twist. Throughout the film, Washington's detective John Hobbs faces off against a fallen angel known as Azazel, who is able to possess human beings through mere touch, allowing him to hop from host to host and evade capture. Hobbs' ultimate plan involves fatally poisoning himself and then getting Azazel to possess him in a remote area where he'll be unable to leap to another body and be trapped within Hobbs' corpse and then, be dead. And it almost works, except at the very end of the movie, a cat wanders upon Hobbs' body, allowing Azazel to leap into the feline and continue his rampage unimpeded. The end. Hell yeah. It's a really fun twist, and one that may have hit even harder if the film didn't tip us off about Azazel's ability to also possess animals earlier on. About roughly halfway through the film, we briefly see Azazel possessing a cat, making the lack of nearby humans in the climax considerably less tense given the fair likelihood that he could find another living thing to possess out in the wilderness, maybe a fox or a deer or an owl. They're pretty cool too. But if you cut the unnecessary early scene with the cat, the ending could be even better. Although I do think that earlier animal swap moment is so quick that the film rewards those who were really paying attention. I don't know, it works either way for me, but I can totally see the argument for losing it and making that twist even more of a moment. The Magic 8 Ball. Ghost Rider. 2007's Ghost Rider isn't great at the best of times, but it impressively trots out a scene that's too goofy even for a film about a stuntman who sells his soul to become a skeletal superhero. Early on, Nicolas Cage's Johnny Blaze stands up his love interest Roxanne Simpson, played by Eva Mendes, at a restaurant, resulting in a prolonged sequence where she's left waiting for him with increasing impatience and also disappointment. After checking her phone and receiving 0 messages from Johnny, we cut back to her as she pulls a magic 8 ball out of her purse and consults it for wisdom on the date. We don't see what the ball says, but her facial expression makes it clear it's nothing good. But seriously, who the hell is bringing a full-sized magic 8 ball to a fancy restaurant? The scene was presumably supposed to be funny, but it lands horribly, proving more distractingly odd than amusing. Although I will say that if I was on a date with someone and they had a magic 8-ball, that's kind of a green flag. On a serious note, at 110 minutes, the film was already pushing it, and we could have all been spared a minute of our time by cutting this misfired gag in its entirety. Last up, we have the Wild Boar Attack, The Strangers, Chapter 2. Now, there's admittedly a firm argument to be made that The Strangers Chapter 2 could have just been erased from human endeavor entirely, because the slasher sequel has so little meat on its bones that it also undermines the very point of the original. It's just a bad movie all around. It does not need to exist. But there is one puzzling mid-film sequence which sticks out like a sore thumb, enough that you might actively assume it was included only to pad the runtime past the 90-minute mark. While fleeing the titular masked attackers, protagonist Maya, played by Madeleine Petsch, ends up in the woods, where she's attacked by a wild boar, released by one of the strangers. Again, that 30 to 50 feral hogs guy is vindicated every single year. Cue a maddeningly overlong sequence in which Maya attempts to evade the boar by hiding in a car, before finally being forced to do battle with it and eventually stab it to death. Now, for a mere $8.5 million movie, the CGI boar actually looks pretty okay. But what the hell is a boar fight doing in a movie about masked serial killers? You got a bit of a tonal clash going on here. Given that the film had reshoots following the response to Chapter 1, it wouldn't be remotely surprising if this scene was added in as a desperate effort to give audiences more bang for their buck. All it does is make a miserable, creatively bankrupt sequel just feel even harder to take seriously. And it's even more of a slog. A hog slog. Oh, the old hog slog. That's what The Strangers Chapter 2 is. A big old hog slog. We'll go with that. God damn, what a bad scene, that's so bad.